Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder. Today I'd like to do another pickup video, which is kind of funny because I didn't think I was going to be doing one of these for a little while longer, as I didn't really have any plans to pick up anything over the holiday season, I guess. But as it goes, I came across a few good deals and decided to pick up a few games, and I decided to do this video and hope that I'll keep the pickup videos a little bit shorter. I've had a couple complaints about my recent pickup videos, how they got a little bit long, so I figured do it with a few less games, hopefully keep them a little bit shorter, and take care of that. So I guess without further ado then, I will get started. So we're gonna back up a little ways here to around Black Friday. I scored a really great deal on Until Dawn for the PS4. This is a horror game, kind of done in the vein of what you'd expect a slasher film to be, but in game form. I've wanted this for quite a while. Just with my backlog, I've held off on buying it, and with Black Friday, ended up getting this for 20 bucks, which is super awesome because I've heard great things about this. And I will be getting to this soon. I'm still playing Fallout 4, and after I play Fallout 4, I'll play StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void, and then I'm hoping I can squeeze this in. But yeah, 20 bucks, hell of a deal, so that is great. And then also, Best Buy related, one of my coworkers hit me up and he asked me if I had any interest in a free PlayStation 4 game, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah. So my coworker gave me Infamous Second Son for the PlayStation 4. Still new, but the wrap's torn or whatever. So basically, he knows somebody that works at Best Buy, and apparently Best Buy will kind of give out promo stuff to employees, and I guess one of the employees was given a copy of this and had no use for it. Asked my coworker if he knew anybody that might, and I guess I kind of have a reputation with my coworkers that I'm big into gaming, so he hit me up and let me have this for free. I've heard great things about this game. I was pretty interested in playing it, but again, with the backlog, I was like, alright, I'm not really ready for that, so I'll just hold off on it, but ended up getting it for free, so that is swell. And who knows, I'll get to it eventually, of course, as with everything. But yeah, so that is great, and thank you for that. Then a couple other, I guess, kind of little random things. So I've mentioned before that I'm kind of getting more interested in figures and kind of like the collectibles in relation to video games. So I was doing a little browsing on the internet somewhere and actually saw this, and there was no thought about it, ordered it right away, and that is the Queen of Pain from Dota. It's a little figure. What's kind of interesting about this is I'm a huge fan of Dota 2. I don't play anymore, but you know, I put a few hundred hours into the game, and she's not even one of necessarily my favorite characters, but for those who might not know, my main chunk of my sleeve tattoo is actually a really cool artist rendition of the Queen of Pain, and I just really love the picture and was looking for ideas for tattoos at the time and decided, hell yeah, I'll go with that. So I got the tattoo, and then I saw the figure, and just I don't know, kind of a little bit more recognition, I guess. You know, when I look at that, I think of my tattoo. I'm very proud of it, and I thought it was a cool figure. And you know, demon chicks, you know, there's nothing wrong with those. You know, everybody appreciates them, I think. So you know, a little bit more spice to the shelf, as it were. And then also a little bit more recently, I picked up the Mario 30th Anniversary Classic Colors amiibo. And I've said before, I'm not crazy about amiibos, but I think they're kind of cool. You know, I'm not going for a full set or collection by any means, but there's a few of them that I definitely do want, and I thought this was a perfect fit for what I was looking for, so I decided to pick that up. So then moving on to a few things that I'm really excited about. And actually, a couple of these I was keeping an eye out for, but the game I was reminded about thanks to Nintendo. He has a great channel. I encourage everybody to check it out. But I had kind of forgotten about Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, so I decided to pick that up. He picked it up himself, and I was like, oh yeah, I totally spaced about the game. So I started doing some looking, and I saw that in the last 6 months or so, the price of the game has kind of went up a little bit. So I decided to go ahead and jump on that before the price got too high. And actually, this completes my Fallout collection, so I have all the games. I don't have necessarily the original releases like Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics. I have in the Fallout Anthology that I did another video about. But I now have Fallout Brotherhood and Steel, and this is pretty much, it's done in like the dungeon crawler, kind of like Diablo style, even though the original Fallouts were in that style. This is more, a little less heavy RPG, a little bit more action, seamless gameplay sort of situation. It can be played single player or co-op, which is very great, so I'm hoping at some point I can get one of my friends over and we can play through this and maybe do a review on it or something. But then sticking with the Fallout universe here, I decided to pick up a Fallout Vault Boy figure. This is a GameStop exclusive, I guess, which I could care less where I got it. I'm just glad I have it. Just another cool little thing. I'm obviously a huge fan of Fallout, as I've said, and I was pretty stoked to have that, and it was a pretty cheap price. I was kind of surprised about that. I thought it would have been a little bit more, not for any particular reason. And then also, for those who might have listened to my podcast that I co-host with Flynn, one of Flynn's Arcade, the Game Tenants podcast. And there's been a couple times in the episodes where I have, in, I guess, best way to describe it, bitched about the fact that the Jones Cola, Nuka-Cola, which was a limited run kind of promo thing in anticipation for Fallout 4, Jones Cola did a Nuka-Cola, which is a beverage in the Fallout games, and they initially did their first run of these very limited. They were exclusive to Target. Some Targets only got like 6 bottles from what I hear, some got cases, but at the time there was not really any sort of limits on it, so a lot of, whatever people want to argue, for the most part, scalpers and resellers hit these Targets, bought out the entire stock within minutes, which was complete bullshit. I understand trying to make a buck, but being a dick about it, especially on the limited things where the fans actually, this is made for the fans. This isn't made for some jackass to make a bunch of money off of. And so, yeah, so that happened within an hour of these being released. They were already going up on eBay for like $100, which is ridiculous. And thanks to, I gotta say thanks to Jones Cola or Bethesda, whoever looked into this and was like, hey, this really sucks for the fans. So they decided to do a second run, and actually they limited it. So I was able to pick up a Nuka-Cola Quantum. Like I said, this is actually just Jones Cola, but, it's not exactly like the game. It doesn't glow. It doesn't have the like rocket bottle from Fallout 4. The other games were just regular bottles, but just something a little cool. I think a lot of the custom-made ones that I've seen are a lot cooler. More official-looking bottles, official-looking labels. But either way, I thought this was really cool, and I was fortunate enough to pick up a couple because they were supposed to be limited to 2 per store, so I got 2 at one store and I picked up another one, in knowing that I have friends that would love to have these to throw in their collections, so I picked up a couple others. I already gave one to one of my friends, and yeah, so I have pretty much everything Fallout. I'm missing, like I said, I have all the games, but I'm missing the original PC versions of 1, 2, and Tactics, and I still want to get the Fallout 3 Collector's Edition, but I pretty much have everything else, and I got a Vault Boy, and I got a Nuka-Cola, and hell yeah, so that is very cool. So then moving on here to a recent sale at one of the local game shops, my favorite game shop in the Twin Cities area that I've been to so far, at least. I've been to a lot, and this is going to be Punch-Out Games in Forest Lake. And over the week or two before Christmas, they were doing all kinds of sales, usually a sale a day, X% off of games, and they did a PS2 sale, and it was 50% off games. So I tried to resist, but of course that's a pretty good discount, and a lot of these games I was able to get for a decent amount under what they usually go for, so I decided to get a few games. So I guess I will just kind of start going through those and showing you what I got. So the first one here is going to be Front Mission 4 for the PlayStation 2 by Square Enix. This is a kind of like a strategy RPG game that uses mechs. I've never played any of the games. I've always had interest, but this one's kind of popped up a few times. I know Square Enix recently did their holiday sale, and this is one of the ones on there, so I was able to get it for, I think, about the same price as that. But I figured this is a good starting point as any. I know there is a local guy who does game reproductions, and he is doing a reproduction of the original Front Mission for the Super Famicom or the Super Nintendo here, so I might have to pick that up just to, get a little bit more into the roots of the series. So the next game I got here, I've heard a lot of people talk about this game randomly, nothing really in depth, but I figured from what I heard about it, people said it was a pretty enjoyable game. Not exactly what they wanted for kind of the spiritual successor, but I picked up Maximo Ghosts to Glory. Now this is, like I said, it's kind of a spiritual successor to Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, or whatnot, and it takes more of a, it's a similar game in the end. You're just going from point A to point B killing monsters, but this is done in a 3D setting, so I decided to go ahead and get that. So I'm pretty interested to check this out, because the originals, as everybody knows, are classics, and it'll be interesting to see what they did with the games from there. So this next game is Frequency, also for the PlayStation 2. Now this is kind of a in the style of like music games, like Guitar Hero and Rock Band and whatever, where it has the track and you do the notes. This was a game that it doesn't, there's not necessarily, there's not like a guitar or anything. It's all done with the controller, and it's mostly just, more like electronic music and stuff like that. But this is the game that my friends and I used to play a crap ton back in the day, so I was kind of surprised that I didn't actually have this. So of course, got a great deal, decided to pick it up. So I will definitely have to bust this out when I have some friends over again. So these next couple games, I'm kind of, I guess, disappointed that I didn't have them. They've always been relatively cheap, and they're great games. It's actually the games that really got me into the series at that point. But anyways, I got Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. So this was the big change in the Mortal Kombat games when they kind of went from the original 2D style or whatever to a 3D, 3D arena with weapons and stances, and this is the game that really turned me on to the series. I just really liked what they did with the games. I liked Mortal Kombat before then, but I wasn't a huge fan of Mortal Kombat by any means. But this one I thought was really cool. It's actually Mortal Kombat Deception that really, since Deception, I love Mortal Kombat. I just loved what they've done with the series, especially with like the single player campaigns. I've thought were a lot of fun. So yeah, so I got Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and then also I picked up Mortal Kombat Armageddon. So this is basically the end of the timeline of the entire Mortal Kombat story, up until the reboots, the PlayStation 3 and whatever, 360, Mortal Kombat, and then Mortal Kombat X or 10 or whatever you want to call it, which is kind of interesting because this was the last game in the storyline before they went back in time to try to change the events, and it was the last game to use the 3D arena, 3D style with weapons and everything. And very cool game, crap ton of characters to play. Yeah, so I have that again. And this one I don't know. I'm not, so Final Fantasy X, I am not a fan of. Say what you will. I know a lot of people really love it. For me, I started at Final Fantasy II or, American 4, whatever you want to call it. I loved Final Fantasy 4, I loved 6, I loved 7. Didn't really care for 8. I thought 9 was really good, and 10. Final Fantasy X, for me anyways, and I'm not really going to get into it, kind of ruined the series for me. I didn't like what they did with the game, I didn't like what they did with the story, whatever. Anyways, I do have the game, but the sequel, the Final Fantasy X2, I decided to stay far away from, just because of, basically being a continuation of Final Fantasy X and being more of a one-off kind of side story, dealing with like some of the characters have become like pop singers or stuff. But I figured, what the hell. After many discussions online on Facebook and whatnot, I have been convinced to give Final Fantasy X another try. It's been a long time since I played it, and kind of look at it again with take a open perspective at it, and maybe I can enjoy the game again. So I decided that at some point I will play Final Fantasy X again, and now I have Final Fantasy X-2 to play through as well. Now, this game was interesting. I've never seen this before, never heard of it before, which is, could say, some things about the game itself, but I thought it looked kind of like a really cool idea, and I tend to like the third-person kind of action. I wouldn't say survival horror. It's definitely not a horror game, but that like isometric action adventure game kind of thing, and doing it with a Tekken character. This is Death by Degrees, Tekken's Nina Williams in Death by Degrees, which, yeah, so I saw this and looked into it, and I thought it looked interesting. Didn't have great reviews by any means, but, stuff along the lines of, like, a combination of gameplay of, say, like, Resident Evil without the horror, and stuff like Devil May Cry. I thought it could be interesting, so it was a really good price, so I decided to pick this up, and I will be checking this out pretty soon, just because I'm really interested. From what I've seen online, I didn't look too much at reviews, just because I don't want to spoil the game, but yeah, so I'll be interested to see that. So these next two games I've never played. I've always had interest in playing, just never got around to them for some reason. So this is going to be Time Splitters and also Time Splitters 2. So these are, I think they're first-person shooters. I don't think they're not like real shooters or anything. I know the original Time Splitters was kind of like one of the bigger releases for the PlayStation 2. And I've always heard great things about them, just never got around to playing them, never picked them up. So again, obviously, like with everything else, I got a really good deal, so I decided to pick those up. And it's always great when you have, more multiplayer games to play with some friends. Alright, so the last two games here I am super excited to add to my collection. Both games I have been wanting for quite a long time, and I've just never found the right price or the right opportunity to get them. So thankfully, a very good friend of mine gave me a fantastic deal, and thank you very much for that. It means a lot, and it adds two awesome games to my collection. So the first one here is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Now, I've never actually played this game. I know all about it, but the people that I've known that had the game, it was just never anything that was available to play at whatever times when we were hanging out. A lot of people don't play retro games anymore, so never had the opportunity to play it. Always wanted to, and now I finally can, so that is really awesome. And then the last game here, I think everybody pretty much knows about this one, and that's going to be Earthbound. So for obvious reasons, this being a damn expensive game, I've never wanted to shell out the money for it. So actually a few years ago, I ended up buying a reproduction copy of the game, and was able to play through then. I think I actually played through it in 2014 for the first time. I thought it was a cool game. Definitely doesn't live up to the hype that everybody gives it. You know, that's a discussion for another time, but I got a awesome deal for this, and with this deal also, so I gave my friend money for the games, but then also I gave him my reproduction of Earthbound, so it's actually Earthbound Uncut, and I had a box for it, so just kind of, you know, make the incentive for him a little bit better for hooking me up with these great deals. So yes, so I now have Earthbound. So that is great, because having a reproduction is one thing, having the real thing is another, even though you could argue the reproduction could be superior just because it's the unedited version of the game. So that is that. Those are some pretty good pickups. I'm really happy with what I got, and I didn't really spend a whole lot. Obviously, it was skewed a little bit there at the end, but everything else I got for pretty cheap, and I think that is great. You know, I can never pass up on a good deal, or it's very hard to anyways. So I would be interested to know, you know, what are your thoughts on some of these games, especially on some of the ones that I haven't played. Have you played them? You know, let me know. I would be very interested to hear thoughts, and you know, especially like with Earthbound, like what are your thoughts on Earthbound? You know, do you think it lives up to the hype? You know, a lot of people say it's one of the best RPGs ever made, and I don't agree with that. It is a good game by, you know, many different reasons, but yeah, so alright, well, I guess that does it for this time, and I don't really plan on having a pickup video for a little while, but, you know, like I said with the last time, I didn't plan on having a pickup video for a few months, but, you know, ended up being, you know, about a month and a half or so. So, yeah, but I got a couple other things coming up. I got some more reviews, I got some other videos, and, yeah, I'm pretty stoked to show those when I get them done. So, I guess I'm just starting to ramble at this point, so I will let you go about your business, and I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you next time on the Game Grinder.